Perception Architecture Radio.
Hello, welcome to Perception Architecture Radio. This is a podcast about the relationship between the mind, the body, belief systems, and reality. So it's more a show about perception than it is about architecture, and how when we change our relationships with reality by deconstructing and reconstructing belief systems and cultural narratives, the reality we experience begins to change. So basically anything to do with that and living better and becoming more you for the better of you and everyone else. That's most of what this is about. I suppose more than anything it's really me trying to understand myself better, and so as I do that then maybe other people can learn some stuff too. Just figuring stuff out really, not that complicated. It'll be like one big long ongoing conversation, so thanks for your time, thanks for being here, and thanks for getting involved. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 3A of Perception Architecture Radio. This episode is with Dan Brule. Dan Brule is a master breathworker. Dan Brule is somebody that I followed him for a long time. His work has really affected me in a lot of ways, and it's kind of strange because it's just about breathing. It's like, yeah, everybody knows how to breathe, okay. Very simple, you know, and it kind of is simple, and that's why it's really effective. So it's like one of these fundamental things that it's like you don't pay attention to it. And I've heard this said a few times. It's like the secret to it is right underneath your nose, and it's like that's where they make you focus on in Vipassana. If you do one of these 10-day meditation courses, it's like right here for 3 days. You focus here, and it's like, God, it's so boring. But at the same time, it's like there's so much stuff going on there, but you don't notice because your senses are so kind of obtuse and so just blinded and bombarded with so much stimulus all the time. And when you sit there and you let all of that kind of stuff settle and you let things clear, then you really get this sense that there's more going on there than you think. And so, yeah, sorry, I set this up kind of on the fly really, so there's no windshield for the microphone, so you can probably see that camera moving in and out and hear a little bit of wind. It's a bit unprofessional, but whatever. It's fine. That's the breath, you see. That's the inhale, exhale. So that was deliberate. Yeah. So anyway, please enjoy this conversation with Dan Brule. He's a legend. Not live, but recording. So there we go. Okay, welcome to Perception Architecture Radio. Today with me is Dan Brule. Dan Brule is, I would say you're like a world authority on breathwork, at least in my eyes. Dan is a modern day teacher, healer, and world-renowned pioneer in the field of breathwork. He's one of the creators of breath therapy and was among the original group of internationally certified rebirthers. So he's a master of Prana Yoga, a master of Qigong, and leads the worldwide spiritual breathing movement. And since 1970, Dan has personally trained more than 150,000 people in 60 countries to use the breath and breathing for self-improvement, self-healing, and spiritual awakening. So he's trained Olympic athletes, elite warriors, and martial artists. He coaches leading medical experts, corporate executives, and peak performers, including Tony Robbins. This is quite a resume, Dan. He's the author of several books, including Just Breathe, which is one of my personal favorites, Master Breathwork for Success in Life, Love, Business, and Beyond. So that's the basics, the bare bones, I think, which is quite an incredible amount you've achieved in your life there already.
Well, it just means that I've never had a real job. You know, I've just been an obsession with breathing and with breath work. And I just haven't managed to make any time for anything else for the last 40 or 45 years. And so even someone slow and stupid, if you do the same thing long enough, you're bound to learn something, you know?
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's an obsession that served you pretty well. And like hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. So I congratulate you for that. I'm personally interested in your story. One of the things I really like about your approach to breath work is I know that you were in the military and you were military trained, and you were, one of the things I remember being really captivated by was your story in the boxing ring. For myself, I used to fight MMA, so I know a little bit about being in the ring, and the way you described that boxing scene, it was like I was right on the edge of my chair reading it, yeah, and because you can feel all the things at that time that as they happen, it sounds like a really compelling way to kind of discover breath work in such an intense environment.
Yeah, I mean, those things we learn, it's like if something works on the battlefield, it works in the boardroom. And, I've had a lot of experience with people, who are like, they're in the dojo, they've been practicing karate or taekwondo, and they have really beautiful, graceful moves, and their katas are great. But when their heart rate goes up to 150, 170 beats a minute, and when they're overwhelmed with genuine biological fear, a lot of that training just goes right out the window, and you end up just curling up in the fetal position and hoping the other person will be compassionate, So, it's like learning to swim or riding a bike. There's no real way to do it except to jump in. And so, anything that's going to be high stress, that requires intense awareness, that requires grace and flow, the breathing is the perfect helper, the perfect tool for managing all that arousal, for, managing our physiology, bringing our focus into the present moment, finding our center of gravity. The breath is this Swiss Army knife of life. And, you can use it in all these really important ways, but it's not taught in school. Everyone is just left up to their own devices. We've all had a gym teacher when we were 14 years old who was reminding us to breathe, but how do you put that into some practical application? A lot of people just take it for granted because it seems so simple, so basic, so obvious. But those things turn out to be the most powerful. So they deserve real intense study and development and practice to extract the possibilities and the potential. We're capable of a heck of a lot more than we think, than we've led to believe. And the breath is a key in unlocking that reserve energy, that untapped potential. So I'm a missionary for the breath because it's so empowering. And I don't know of any other single practice that has benefits on all of the levels: psychological, emotional, physiological, spiritual, social. And so, the average person needs the same advantage that, peak performers and people who work in high stakes life and death situations, they're trained to breathe because, lives are lost. Millions of dollars can be wasted. But the average person deserves the same advantage, the same benefit. So I'm just a missionary for the breath, basically.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to describe it. I like that. And like the way you describe the breath, it just sounds like the common thread that links all of the different, I suppose, what you would call dimensions or worlds or things like that together, like your physical, your emotional, your psychological.
Yeah. It's literally the link between the body and the mind. It's literally the thing that connects the body and the mind is the breath. And it's also, breathing helps us connect the conscious mind to the unconscious. So, breathing is regulated by this very ancient spinal, deep, reptilian reflex. And we can also control it through the modern part of the brain. And so, wow, bringing those two parts, ancient brain, modern brain together, we cut new neural pathways. Every time we breathe consciously, and deliberately with an intention, we're laying down new neural pathways. And the more we practice and we myelinate those new passages, those new canals, those new channels, the more we can achieve. And so, breathing is the key to whatever our next level in our development and our art, whatever it is. The breath is that thing that takes us. It's the next major key skill set that high-performing people need to have. And anybody with a belly button deserves to have the same advantage. I mean, to be able to eliminate our own pain, to vent fatigue and tension from our body, to charge ourselves with energy when we don't think we can go another step. I mean, God, there's so many ways that we can tap into the breath to get through, to get over, to get ahead. So,
yeah, it's seriously extensive. Because when people first get introduced to the idea of breath work, it just seems like, oh, well, everybody's breathing, right? Everybody's kind of going in and going out. And like, you have no idea how deep it actually goes and like how many different ways you can breathe. And there's just so many different ways you can breathe to create so many different effects in the body. Some of them are like hyper stimulating and energizing. Yeah. Some of them are super relaxing and kind of, they calm you down a lot. And it's really, it just seems like the key to so much of what we miss when we spend so much time up in our heads.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the breath gives us access to these ecstatic states and sublimely peaceful states. And it's a skill. And like any skill, the more you practice, the better you get, the more you can accomplish. So people need to get on the train, and it starts with just simple breath awareness, just noticing how you breathe, observing the breath come and go, becoming more intimate with it, tuning into the details of it, and just starting to wake up the potential of it through our focus. As soon as you focus on the breathing, you pay attention to it, it starts to open up. We start to find ways to use it. And so everything starts with breath awareness. The ritualistic daily practice of just sitting for 10 or 15 minutes and doing nothing except allow the breath to come and go by itself, and just fix your attention on it, become absorbed in the process, notice the sensations when the breath comes in, observe the feelings and sensations when the breath goes out. If there's a pause, be very alert in that pause, sense what's happening in the body, notice the reflex to inhale, follow it. You know, that's putting us in touch with our nature, and it's also bringing us into the present moment, and it gets us out of our head. So breathing awakens heart intelligence, breathing awakens body intelligence, and so you can show up fully when you use the breath.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really, there's something when you say sitting there and doing nothing, for people that might be starting to get into meditation. I know when I first started to get into this kind of thing, there was a sense of panic that sometimes arises, like, well, I don't have time to do nothing. I've got so many things to do. I don't have time to do absolutely nothing. But actually, the way you describe it, when you're sitting there, you're not actually doing nothing per se. There's a hell of a lot going on. It's just not up here.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, if we're developing meditative awareness. So I could meditate staring at a candle. I could repeat a mantra. I mean, there's lots of methods of meditation, but the breath itself is an object of the meditation. And so it's what my friend Mark Divine would call concentration training, attention training, which will save your life in certain moments if you're more conscious and more aware. And so the more conscious and aware we become of our breath, the more conscious and aware we become of everything. Our feelings, our emotions, our reactions, our behavior, our posture, the effect we have on people, our situation. And so that awareness just helps us to bring ourselves to the next higher level. And so when I teach breathwork, we have two different basic aspects. One is what we're talking about now, where you don't breathe in any special way. You don't do the breathing. You're surrendering to your own nature. You're becoming intimate with the flow of breath in you. You're coming into the present moment. You're becoming more mindful. You're becoming more relaxed. You're becoming more aware. And then when you consciously breathe, you get more from the breathing exercise or technique. Whatever exercise or technique you practice, the more awareness you have, the more you're going to get from it. The more you're able to relax, the more you're going to get from it. The more actual breath control you have, the more you're going to get from the exercise or technique. So we start with very simple focus on developing awareness and relaxation, and then we start to bring the breath in, and we can surprise ourselves of what we can accomplish, resources we can access within us, human potential that's latent, waiting to be tapped, and the breath, it becomes a key for awakening that in us. It's pretty much guaranteed. It's just a matter of actual practice. And but it doesn't take very long before people, you can change your physiology, change your blood pressure in 60 seconds, with breathing. It's not like you have to wait for the results. Certain things are immediate. As soon as you get a handle on your breath, you've gotten a handle on your attention, and you're just pulling it away from maybe self-degrading self-talk, performance-degrading self-talk. Just by focusing on the breath, you're unhooking from other things, and it creates a space for something new. We're driven by habits. Some of those habits are serving us, and some of them get in our way. So having the habit of turning to your breath and noticing how you're breathing when you're stuck in traffic, when someone is insulting you, when you're enjoying music, when you're having an orgasm, when you're training, when you're lifting weights, paying attention to our breath, we're going to get really important information, and we can make some adjustments that translate into huge advantages.
Yeah, it's like, I think the way you described it, where you're kind of opening up a space. So instead of being reactive to all the patterns, it's more like you have space to respond. You get to, maybe the element of choice comes in, like, could I react a different way than I've been doing for, maybe my entire life?
Yeah. How many times have we said something or done something, and afterwards we go, what was I? And if we would have just had the wherewithal and had already practiced, just take a breath before you react, come back into your center, how much stuff we could avoid just with a simple conscious breath, interrupting patterns. That alone makes the practice of breath work, life-saving and relationship-saving sometimes.
Yeah, and particularly, like, the talk about focus and concentration training, it seems like people's attention is a massive commodity in today's world. It's like there's so many distractions everywhere. To actually learn how to focus and concentrate, it's like there's nobody really teaching that. So it seems like the breath would be something that could really, like a vehicle that could really take you into how to do that properly and stay focused and stay concentrated on what's important instead of getting distracted.
Oh, exactly. And the breath is this arena, or it's a space where we play with certain forces and dynamics and principles. And so, I like to think about it as if you suddenly discovered you had another limb, an arm growing somewhere you didn't know about, and you discover it, and wow, all the new things you can do. And so it's really exciting when people discover, what you can do with your breath, controlling your chemistry, it's just really exciting. And so that's the game. We have to approach the breath like with a love affair, with real passion, with real enthusiasm, and unlock the potential. We're capable of so much more. And for many, many people, bringing in that little element of the breath is just that extra piece. It brings everything together, or it triggers a new path, a new level. The words inspiration, to be inspired, that's not a coincidence in the language. It's related literally to the breath. And everything from healing energy to creative energy, clearing our mind. God, the breath is just this perfect tool. And all we need to do is start to deliberately practice and see how far you can take it. You look at guys like Wim Hof and Mark Divine, and people who, like, through the breath have achieved these extraordinary abilities. And they're no different than anyone. They just practice. So that's how it goes.
Potential. Yeah, well, It's really true. Like, and sometimes I forget this. Like, you forget with your own practice. And just before this interview, I was thinking, all right, Dan Brule's coming on. He's quite a big name, so I'm a little bit nervous about this. And then I started doing some of these Wim Hof breathing exercises that I've been quite big on recently, and it's like just my whole biochemistry changed. Like, the quality of my thoughts changed. Like, my physiology was completely different, and it was no more than 10 minutes of fairly intense breathing, but it was it's just remarkable. And every time I come back to this, I remember, the power of the breath is something that you really want to pay attention to and develop a good relationship with. And so I wanted to ask you, and for the people listening to this, when was the first time that you really thought, like, wow, breath is something that I need to pay attention to? Because it's like some experience that just got you hooked on it.
Yeah. I mean, as a little Catholic boy in kindergarten, and, when the pastor, the Monsignor of our church came through every Friday and visited all the classes. And I remember the first time he came to our class and talked about Genesis and God forming the body of man with the dust of the earth and breathing into the nostrils of man the breath of life. I was so excited as a little kid. Your imagination is like, I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't excited. Like, oh my God, it's like God is breathing into us. Oh, wow. And so something was awakened really early. And then near drowning experiences and getting the wind knocked out of me, and everything just kept pointing me back to the breath. And then when I became an X-ray technician, right out of high school, one of the easiest X-rays to take is a chest X-ray. And when you take a chest X-ray, you tell the person, take in a deep breath, hold it, and then click, you take their picture. And I gave people those same simple instructions, and I started to realize everybody did something different. The muscles they used, the expression on their face, what they felt was a deep breath, what they went through to accomplish it. I mean, it was as if the breath started speaking to me. And I realized how our breathing patterns express and reflect our relationship to our body, to ourselves, to life, to the world. And so it was like, wow, the breath is speaking to me. And in the military, I did underwater rescue. I was a deep sea diver. And before I went in the military, I resuscitated my first person. I was just 19 years old. I had taken CPR. And you come upon somebody who's clinically dead, and you blow into them and they blink and wake up. It's like, talk about a miracle of the breath. And when you love what you do, the universe gives you lots of opportunities to do it. And so I probably resuscitated 19 people in my life, out of maybe 30 attempts, And I was so happy when I discovered Rebirthing, which it helped me, instead of coming upon somebody who was dead and breathing with them and helping them come back to life, I could come upon somebody who was alive, breathe with them, and make them more alive. So it was the same work, just a couple of steps higher up on the ladder, a lot more fun, and maybe even more important if you look at it in the cosmic kind of perspective. Maybe what I'm doing now is even more important. Helping people tap that source of life in them and channel the flow of life through them for their art, for their healing abilities, for their performance. So, I don't know what else to do. It's if I could find something more important, I'd probably shift to it.
The good thing about breathing is, like, it's not quite as dogmatic as other systems of living. It's just like, here are some things that you can do, and here are the effects. Seems almost very kind of phenomenological in a lot of ways. Yep. So you got into it through Rebirthing, then? That was the first thing you started doing?
Well, it was the first method of process that showed me that we can use it really for psycho-spiritual development. Because I had practiced breath holding, we had practiced hyperventilating on oxygen, doing underwater breath holding. We were regulating our breath while we were running. We were practicing box breathing, you know, military stuff. But the psycho-spiritual aspect of it really opened up to me when I got out of the military and discovered rebirthing. And within 15 minutes of this conscious connected breathing, where the inhale is active and the exhale is passive. And it's a continuous circular breath. And I'll tell you, within 15 minutes, all of the stress of 5 years in the military in Vietnam era just melted off me like a skin off a snake. And my senses of perception opened up like they'd never been. And it was a miraculous transformation experience. And I don't know, when any of us have something like that, we want to share it. We want everybody we love to have that experience. It's so liberating, so empowering. It's like coming home, you know? And so, yeah, I basically, I discovered rebirthing in 1976, and it gave real form and structure for the first time to a path that we could take, a breath-centered path of spiritual development, emotional development, psychological development, and it was radical. You know, I mean, it was unheard of that just by turning to the breath, we can deal with our emotional and mental state. We can manage our our chemistry. This was like unheard of, but now it's science is caught up. Medical scientists, research on the vagus nerve and the neurological changes that occur. And we're figuring out why some of these ancient yogic techniques work, and why is it that when we play with our breath, we can accomplish certain things and trigger certain healing responses. I'm so glad, because 40 years ago, I felt like a voice crying out in the desert. Nobody was listening, you know, breathing, schmeathing, meditation, you know, and I got laughed out of so many serious rooms. But patience and, you know, 40 years and science is catching up. So it's a perfect days. We're living in really amazing times where we can take a leap in human potential. We can't skip anything, but boy, we can zip through things really quick and pop out the other side much better humans. And I think we need to do that. Things are getting intense on the planet. We need to learn how to relax into intensity. We need to learn how to keep our center when everybody around us is going crazy. We need to know how to flow with the changes in life. When we don't have any energy, we need to know how to tap our reserve. We need to know how to calm ourselves down, and you can plug the breath into every one of those needs and desires.
Yeah, that's a really powerful message, because I think today I know so many people are struggling with anxiety and depression and things, and it's like, on the one hand, they've never been better in some cases. Like, there's more people who've been lifted out of poverty. The resources we've got are phenomenal, but at the same time, people are going through these kind of psychological, emotional crisis. And I think, so in your book, you have these 3 sections, breath for the body, breath for the mind, and breath for the spirit. And so for people who suffer with these kind of psychological, you might call them afflictions or conditions, depression or anxiety or things like that, like how does breathwork help to navigate those areas?
Well, certain breathing patterns, certain qualities in the breath, it's like oil and water when it comes to certain states. So, for example, you can't breathe in a certain way and be depressed at the same time. You can't be depressed and breathe in certain ways. There are certain things just don't mix. And take anxiety, for example. One of the skills that we learn or we master in breathwork is what we call engaging the exhale, releasing the exhale, snapping it loose, dumping it out, setting it free, allowing the exhale to be reflexive. And so I tell people, and it's very clear, if you haven't learned how to let go of your breath, if you can't release your exhale, don't be surprised if you can't let go of pain. if you can't release anxiety or fatigue or thoughts going around in your head, you haven't mastered this energetic skill of letting go. Many of the things that we're dealing with and struggling with, maybe we just need to let them go. Maybe the more we work on them, the more complicated they become, the more of a complex it becomes. And maybe all we need to do is get good at just letting go, releasing things. So we master releasing the breath. And when you get good at letting go of the breath, then you can apply that to a pain. You can apply that to an illness. You can apply that to a negative thought or a limiting belief. And along with this ability to let go of the breath, you can let go of muscles. You can let go of joints. You can let go of the past. You can let go of old programs and conditionings. Letting go is a powerful spiritual skill. And we use the breath to master it. And then you'd be surprised what you can let go of. Rather than just struggling with it, you can just let it go. And so certain things just stop bothering us. Certain things just stop being a problem when we master certain patterns of breath, certain exercises, a certain quality of the breath, certain techniques. And we're developing abilities that go way beyond the breathing, and it doesn't take much time to figure that out and to realize it.
It sounds almost like the way you describe the breath, it's almost like a language of its own. Like it's its own kind of language.
Yeah. Every breathing pattern, well, every psychological state has a corresponding breathing pattern. Every emotional state has an associated breathing pattern. It's a signature breathing pattern that goes with those states. And the state causes the breathing pattern, and the breathing pattern supports the state. And so when you change the breathing pattern, you change your state. And it's almost like cheating because it's so quick. It's like kicking the legs out from under a table. Things just dissolve. So that ability to breathe consciously, to infuse every cell with breath, which is a kind of a meditation, a visualization, imagery, a sensation where when you breathe in, don't just breathe in, send the breath to every cell in your body and get really good at infusing every cell with breath and energy. And wow, you're going to prevent a lot of stuff. You're going to harmonize and balance systems in your body. It's like, wow, we have these abilities that we all have. And all we need to do is turn our attention to it, practice a little bit, and you can eliminate a whole lot of medications and prevent surgeries and all kinds of stuff, which is what we should be doing. Instead of trying to let somebody else fix us, we screw ourselves up and we go to some expert and they fix us. Why not get in the game of, of preventing and charging ourselves with energy and learning how to release and vent stress and anxiety before they become serious issues that affect our organs and our system. Hey, you take a bath every day, you go to the toilet, breathing has to be equally important as a daily, several times a day ritual. You know, it's as important as eating and sleeping and going to the toilet and showering. And it's got to be right up there on that same level, given the same amount of regular attention. And when we do, oh my God, you're going to add years to your life. You're going to add quality to your years, your connection to each other, to ourselves, to other people deepens. Oh man, I'm wondering where the limit is. I'm still trying to push the envelope. What else is possible? What's the next step, And in that question, my focus these days is we call group flow. We've got it down how individuals can get into the zone, get into the flow state. The next generation, the next level of that is group flow. People working in tight teams. How do they connect energetically and synchronize their breathing so that they have an intuitive connection to each other? They sense each other better. They finish each other's sentences more. Breathing creates a certain bond, a certain deep connection in teams, which is it gives them a tremendous advantage over other teams.
Oh, for sure. I remember when we do group breathing exercises together, like at the end of it, there's this, just the sense of kind of unity that's there is it's profound. Like it's really like quite amazing. I think I think it was it Stig Severinsen you referenced in your book, the Danish guy, and he was saying you stop paying the medical systems to keep you sick. I thought that was a really nice quote. Yeah. And so like breathing is really something that can transform the body. I think that's the first part of the section of the book, just breathe. And so you teach people so when somebody's kind of in chronic pain, how do you go about addressing that with the breath?
Well, pain locks up the breathing. Mm-hmm. And it locks up the breathing right at that point where the inhale turns into the exhale. So, you know, ow, it's like the pain locks up the breathing and doesn't allow the exhale to flow. Right. And when the pain passes, then the breath can expand, and it can flow. And it's like the system is waiting for pain to leave the body so that breath can flow again. And the same thing with fear. Fear locks up the breathing. Right? And when the fear passes, that sigh of relief, the opening and expanding of the breath, the flowing of the breath is resumed. And so all we need to do is focus on the breath in those moments. Practice opening and releasing the breaths. And you can't do that without releasing pain. It just happens automatically. If you can get the breath flowing, if you can get the breath to expand and release, the breath is going to pump the pain out of the body. It's like oil and water. Pain state and smooth flowing breath, expansive flowing breath cannot exist in the same place in the same time. One displaces the other. And so we just need to get a handle on the breath, bring in a certain quality of smoothness, expansion, release into the breath. And that's going to do the work on the level of pain or fatigue or anxiety or fear, all those other levels. The connection's already there. We just need to get a handle on the system and start to direct the breath towards a certain quality, a certain flow. And the system will just come on like the breathing is the flywheel of the body. You get it spinning smooth and all the other wheels connected to it, they all come into a certain order automatically. And that's why we teach, Navy SEALs, Special Forces, if you jump out of a helicopter and you land in the middle of a shitstorm and none of the intelligence was correct and you're not in the right place what do? Call your mother, curl up in a ball, get somebody on the radio? No, you get a handle on your breathing. You get a handle on your breathing. And then you'll do the right thing in the next moment. It's just your training kicks in. The next thing that needs to be done, once you've taken that breath and established some energy and some flow, you're going to find yourself doing the right thing. It just connects us to this ability to flow. But it takes practice. So we practice in the shallow end of the pool. We practice with little irritations. We practice with little moments. And then we take that practice into increasingly stressful or difficult situations until we've mastered this ability to keep connected to our energy, to keep access to clear thinking, open heart, flowing, resourceful movements. And it's all because we've made the breathing the primary thing that we focus on, because through the breath, everything else will naturally come into order.
It's like you're kind of reframing the discomfort there a little bit. It sounds like, so you add in these little irritations or you increase the intensity of the training ground. So when people start off kind of meditating initially, it's like you want the environment to be very, very peaceful so you can relax and focus. But then as you get better at it, you want to kind of take it out into the outside world. And, maybe you want to go into a super intense environment, like on the battlefield or in the ring or something like that, and see if you can hold that center point while you're there.
Yeah, because anyone can relax when everything's right with the world and the kids are healthy and there's a lot of money in the bank and you're with your favorite person in the favorite place and everything is just the way you want it. hell, anybody can relax then. What good is it? But can you relax when something, when you've been hijacked by emotions, when you're caught in a difficult situation? That's when it's really required. And that's when the breathing can deliver to us exactly the resources we need to get through those intense moments. So yeah, it's like weightlifting. You start with 10 kilos and then 20 and then 30 and 40, and pretty soon you're a world champion weightlifter. You start with certain little stressful situations. You build and build until there's no situation where you can't remain connected, clear, open-hearted, loving, resourceful, creative. And the breath it's the door to that. It helps us to return to that place when we get pulled out, and it helps us to stay in it when we find it.
So a lot of people who are then in, how often do you find this, that when somebody's in, say like chronic physical pain, or they have a lot of chronic physical pain, there's actually the root cause of it is something psychological or emotional. And when they get into these breathing exercises, what actually happens is, and I'm curious to hear your take on why this happens, because it's maybe still something of a mystery to me, but when we do these like really intense breathing exercises, it seems to bypass the brain, and then a lot of emotional stuff comes up, like in the case of holotropic breathing, or like some of the stuff that we're doing with the music and breath work. And then how often do you find that is linked to physical pains and things like that?
I think everything is psychological, everything is emotional. All the physical things that we're dealing with, there's a powerful psychological, emotional content to it, or even cause for it. And the breathing gets under it. If we have unconscious fears, if we have unconscious memories, we had a shock when we were a child, a trauma, it's buried deep in our subconscious. But, our unconscious is always scanning, always looking for danger, and it can keep us on edge. And the breathing clears this stuff out of our psyche. It clears the memories from the cells of our body, so we can return to a place of pre-trauma. And, every shock, every trauma we've ever had created some inhibition on the breathing. So these little layers of shocks and traumas that don't seem like a lot in themselves, they accumulate, and the breathing gets more and more inhibited under the weight of all this stress and trauma and anxiety. So we got to bring some energy. Yeah. And the breath gets shallow, and we got to bring some energy in to lift all that stuff off. So the breathing is just a way to access energy. And then we let that, call it what you want, prana, chi, ki, life force, whatever. And it does the work. We relax, we allow this energy to do the work, and we do our own spiritual purification. We do our own recovery and cleansing and purging and detoxing, emotional detoxing, psychological detoxing. The breath is just this very beautiful force to do all that healing work. And it's just a matter of practice. It's just a matter of practice.
Yeah. So for people then, I did a lot of kind of Wim Hof stuff, and people are doing things like holotropic breathing as well. Some of the experiences you can have, like my first experience was actually with rebirthing. It was a deep tissue bodywork massage alternating between rebirthing and breath of fire. It was like an hour and a half worth of this. And then after that, I had this super intense experience where it was complete out of body. And it was like, it took me a couple of days, well, and the rest of my life, but it took me a couple of days initially I had to take some time out, because it's like, what was that? What was that I just experienced there? And I think for a lot of people who are coming new into the breath work and going into intense things like, or really intense breathing sessions like the Wim Hof ones, or maybe holotropic breathing, how do you help people kind of integrate what because they might have an experience that's just completely blown their mind. It's like, what is this? How do you typically best help people integrate those kinds of things?
Yeah, well, depending on the kind of religious programming or conditioning, you can frame it in different ways, philosophically, intellectually. But the real thing is focusing on the actual feelings that result and getting in touch with our body, you know, and the ease and the flow and the lightness and the aliveness in the body. And if we can attach some meaning to that, if we can go, oh, it helped me to realize that when I was a child, and I don't remember it, but I got scared by a dog, and my whole life I've been nervous about dogs. And then during a breathing session, they remember that first time. They feel all that original shock and fear. They restore their breathing to the natural breath before they had that shock. And then they realize they've gotten rid of something that's been holding them back, or, you know, they've been carrying their whole life. And it's so unarguably liberating that we don't need to understand. The feeling is so real. And, but now, you know, science, the neurological changes that occur, changes in chemistry, we can start to see, or at least understand, why we experience this amazing states. But the understanding of it may not be anywhere near as important as we think. The experience of it is enough, you know. And once you have an experience, it's unarguable, and it motivates you to see, well, what else can I do? Where else can I take this? What else is possible? So, and it all happens organically, naturally. And I have a formula that I use to help people navigate this stuff when it comes up, and how to integrate after a session. And the first is this first element of meditation. Don't think about what's happening. Just be with it. Just observe, just sit, be present, be mindful, be conscious. Don't try to analyze or understand or compare. That's mental activity. That can come later, a byproduct of an intuitive understanding. But in the beginning, you just get out of our head and just be aware. And the other thing is that you want to be able to relax, because if you have tension, you're locking thoughts, feelings, energy, emotions. They're being locked in the body because of the contraction of the muscles. But then if you relax the muscles, these emotions bubble up. And then when the emotions bubble up, we contract again. So the breathing comes in just to kind of just clear all that stuff away. And you practice breathing when you notice the feelings come. And then you find yourself navigating through them. It's like awareness, relaxation, and what we could call continuous breathing, or circular breathing, or like a wheel turning. You just get your breath moving in a connected wheel, and then anything that comes up, the breath is in already a resourceful pattern. If you add relaxation to that, it's going to flow out of you. It's going to release, and it's going to flow. The combination of breathing and relaxation with meditative awareness, that's pretty much the formula. So you ramp up the breathing until you start realizing, oh, I'm not relaxing anymore. And then you focus on the relaxation, and then you ramp up the breathing without losing the relaxation. And you deepen the relaxation without stopping the breathing. So we learn how to combine powerful breathing with complete relaxation. And that's a secret sauce, that combination, powerful breathing and complete relaxation. If you want to aim at something, aim at that. Because right now, the average person, when they relax, the deeper they relax, they don't breathe. And when they breathe in a powerful way, they don't relax. So the skill is, how do I breathe in a powerful way and relax? And one of the first things we need to do is get past that place in us that we cannot relax. Right now, for the average person, their reaction to relaxation is sleep. If I relax, pretty soon I'm sleeping. And so just the ability to stay awake while you're profoundly relaxed, people describe it as a religious experience. They've never, usually they're fast asleep in their most relaxed moments, and so they don't know what it feels like. They're unconscious when it's happening. And so if you can stay awake and reach that state of deep relaxation, then you're going to encounter an experience that's, people need spiritual, religious language and vocabulary to describe it. yet it's a very ordinary thing. And the conscious breathing is what keeps us awake while we relax. And then you find yourself awake during a state that you're very relaxed, and usually you would be sleeping, and it's breathtaking, it's awesome, and it's life-changing. And so that's like the formula. Powerful breathing, complete relaxation in a field of detailed, heightened awareness. And you're going to heal something. You're going to have a breakthrough. You're going to have a transformation. It goes with the territory.
Okay, wow, great. So here's a couple of things that I got from this first half. Like, there's still 45 minutes left of this conversation, and already it's so rich and with so much depth. So one of the things he touched on was, if it works on the battlefield, it works in the boardroom. And Dan has a history in boxing. He trained in the military, and I think I resonate a lot with the stuff that he says there, like with my experience in the ring and stuff like that. It was just, I really, really liked that part of the conversation, like to get to talk to him about his experience and how the breath can really help you kind of drop into the space between these really fast moving emotions. So like when you're in there and your heart's racing at like 100 miles an hour, it's like, how do you actually fall between that to get into the space within, so that the effect of time is kind of like it slows down, and that thing like in Spider-Man where that guy throws the punch at him and he's like I never got to that kind of level. I never got to Spider-Man level, unfortunately, but there is something there when you can really be in that present moment where, when you have if you ever have an accident or something. I've fallen off my bike a few times, and it's like you can see it all happening in slow motion. It's like, here I go. I'm about to fall. Still falling. I'm about to fall. It's like the experience of time slows down, and I think this is one of these states that you can really get to with deep meditation, and by using the breath to kind of get into the physiology and really go deep and have that kind of effect. So anyway, there's that. What else did he say? He said breathwork should be taught in school. I agree with that. We should all be taught how to breathe. We should all be taught how to kind of sit still and be quiet. Like, it's not easy for a kid when you load it up with sugar and all of this like terrible food and all of this stuff, and you just bored senseless because of whatever they're trying to like push into your brain in the classroom in this kind of violent and aggressive manner. And it's like, if you just learned to listen properly, if you were taught to kind of, all right, sit down and listen, because it's really good for you to do this, and something might arise. It's a really useful skill to have. Then, yeah, and if you're taught how to kind of focus on your breathing, you can get into these kind of trance-like states, which you can access at any time, and they just help you kind of navigate effectively through life. So, yeah, I agree with that completely. Breathwork should be taught in school. And what else did he say? He said breath is the key. The practice, the average person should be taught how to breathe. It's like, yeah, definitely. It's still baffles me why it's like it's almost too simple and people reject it. Like, well, everybody's breathing all the time, so what the hell difference does it make? But it's really, since I started exploring this world, the depth of where you can go with these different practices, it's like you have no idea how many different ways you can breathe. There's so many, and there's so many different effects that it has on the body. And one of the things that I liked, Dan was talking about the breath as a language. It's like this, each emotional state has a corresponding breath pattern, and that just blew me away. It's like, oh my God. So your emotional states have a corresponding breath pattern. So breath is almost like its own language. You can see by the way that somebody's breathing what emotional state they're in, and also you can utilize a different emotional state, so you can access more mental resources within a situation to help you to resolve the problem instead of getting stuck in these mad patterns. he said we need to learn to relax into the intensity to be able to, let me see if I get this right. We need to learn how to relax into the intensity when things are going crazy around, flow with the changes in life, tapping energy reserves. It's like all of these things you can do with the breath, all of these different ways of breathing can help you to elicit these kind of states that can give you more energy, that can relax you, can slow your heart rate down, can give you more kind of peace, can help you let go of things. And I've never really been a fan of this whole metaphor of let go, because it's like, what does it mean? I'm not actually holding on to anything. It's not something it's a concept that doesn't seem to have any grounding in reality. It's a metaphorical thing, but I see now, I get a sense now of more of what it's about. I think it just annoyed me when spiritual people would say, oh, you need to let go of that. It's like, yeah, but what does that mean? Like, obviously getting annoyed, but I didn't know what it meant. It's like, what does it mean, let go? It's like, I don't know how I'm holding, and I don't know how to let go. And I mean, basically what I've come to understand it means is just relax. It's like, and one of the keys to relaxation is breathing. It's like, focus on your damn breathing and just relax, because that's your gateway into this relaxation, is focus on your breathing, and then just wait. Like, you don't have to do so much else. It's not like you have to. It's like if you throw a stone in the water, you're not going to get involved in the water to try to flatten it out. It doesn't work like that. You just wait. You just wait and watch, and like, there might be some wind that's going to come, or a little duck that swims across if it's a lake, obviously, or a pond perhaps, and then, well, that's fine. You don't have to kind of shoo the duck away. It's going to create more ripples, so just chill out, watch, wait. It's like practicing patience. Like, focus on your breath and just be patient, and eventually the water clears and it stills, and it's like, oh yeah, now I can see to the bottom, now I can see where I've dropped my phone or whatever. Yeah. And like, but it's relevant because I had my own kind of washing machine type situation in life recently, where things are just kind of outwardly like spinning and spinning and spinning, and like anxiety and depression it doesn't have to be like the default place to go. It's like a very well trained in pathway, and like so many people I know are experiencing it and have experienced it. And it's like, hey, there's a very simple way to mitigate or alleviate this response to the stimulus of life. And it's like, sit down for a minute, create a bit of space around you where possible. And if not, just focus on your breathing, and that kind of creates its own space for you, which is just bloody great. So you could do more of that. And you should, if you're having a hard time. It's like, why don't you do things that help you not have such a hard time, or help you have an easier time? And oftentimes, I know for myself, there's like, well, I don't want to do those things because, and I've got all of these reasons. But it's like, well, that's up to you then, because that's literally all you have to do to get there. And it's not necessarily going to come immediately, but the benefits come very, very quickly. So just a bit of life advice there for everybody. Yeah, so the other thing he said was like engaging the exhale, and I really liked this. Dan's one of the original rebirthers, and so he's about this kind of, the rebirthing breath is like this inhale in, and this kind of just snapping out that he talks about, and it's like just a letting go of everything. And it's really like a physiological metaphor of like, just everything, you just dump everything. And as your body learns to do that physiologically, it translates into the kind of the stories and the patterns that you hold on to. Like, I'm like this, this is what happened to me in the past, which is why I'm like this, and why I have to continue being like this into the future for an indefinite amount of time. And it's like, really? Is that what you want? I don't think that's what you want. I don't think that's what I want. Maybe you do want that. Sometimes I want that also, but not really. Like, there's better things out there, but it's hard to kind of see that when all of this intensity is like right in your face, and it's up in your grill, and like you wake up and life's just like bah, right up there. And what are you supposed to do about that? Well, relax and breathe and be aware. Those three things together. That's Dan's triangle pyramid thing. It's good. It works. It's very effective. What else is there? Oh yeah, this was interesting. The tension comes between the inhale and the exhale, and I thought this was like, that's really true. So when you breathe in, you notice that kind of point up at the top where it's like, I've got all of this oxygen inside of me. What am I going to do with it? Should I keep it? Should I keep it? And then it's like, no, I should let it go. I should let it go. But there is that moment of like, I'm holding my breath, and that's we talk about that when we talk about when you're afraid of something. It's like, hold your breath. You gasp and you gasp in and you hold that breath, and it's like, don't do that. And I found this in my yoga practice recently. I was like experimenting with trying to make this transition smooth, this kind of up and then down and just flowing from the inhale to the exhale. And it's really like, God, it smooths out your entire practice. And I remember doing a seminar once with Dave Camarillo. He's like a UFC fighter trainer. He's does guerrilla jiu-jitsu. And I thought it was such a I really enjoyed the seminar. Like, I thought his methodology of doing it was so great. And he talked about he said he went through the different disciplines, and he was saying just his big thing was like, work on the transitions, make the transitions smooth. And I thought that was so profound, because it's like he didn't say I'm boxing, or I'm Muay Thai, doing Muay Thai, or I'm wrestling, or I'm doing jiu-jitsu or whatever. It was like, I'm just fighting. So I want to be here and then here and then here, and be able to transition through these different styles like effortlessly and seamlessly, and working on your transitions. I also do that now in my yoga. It's like trying to make the transitions as smooth as the poses themselves. It's almost like try to focus on the transitions, and then the poses, you just stay there. And so the poses are like the resting points, or the points where you get to kind of lean into and soften into the pain almost, and just notice that you're all right and that you're not dying. And even though it might suck a little bit if you're kind of stretching a little bit too far, but you're really kind of bridging into that discomfort, which is, it's just so useful. It's just such a useful metaphor. It's like, what's uncomfortable? Well, it's the edge of my comfort zone. So how do I expand and grow? Well, maybe at the edge. Like, that's where that happens. So what if I kind of expanded a little bit here? Well, it might be uncomfortable, but maybe I could develop a kind of a consciousness or awareness that would like that would kind of look for that sense of how do I expand and grow. And then you wouldn't, because the opposite of doing that is like this, like it doesn't just stay static. And if it does, then that's just terrible anyway, because it goes stagnant. You kind of need to, that's where vitality comes in. It's like it flows and it moves you outwards and upwards and backwards and forwards and whichever way. So whatever, I'm kind of rambling a little bit now. That happens sometimes. So yeah, so that, I think that's more or less it. The other thing he talked about was flow states and group flow, which is like when you get a group breathing together and you get them connecting together through this one unified movement, and you think about the breath, it's like the unifying movement that unites these 50 trillion separate microorganisms that are populating your skeleton, which is weird when you think about that, isn't it? Like you're just like a bit of carbon with some flesh around it, but that flesh is just made up of lots of tiny little weird. But it's fine, because they largely cooperate for a good 70 or 80, 90, 100 years most of the time, without too much major catastrophe. And that's like quite amazing. And the whole time they're doing that thing where they're inhaling, exhaling. It's this unifying movement, this kind of in and out, and that it's just it's like a simple thing, but it's quite mind-blowing when you think about it. So yeah, I think once you get lots of these little populous skeletons doing this thing, this inhaling, exhaling together, there's a unification in them on a level that's like outside of the sensory perception, or maybe outside of the sensory perception, at least as far as our five senses go. But maybe there's a definite feeling there. There's a kinesthetic something. There's a connection there that you can actually feel, a tangible, palpable feeling of, oh, it's not just me. I don't just end at my skin. There's more to it than that. And it's like, you give it any thought at all, and it's obvious that there is. So that's also something. Last thing. Experiencing over understanding. And I think this was a question we were talking about holotropic breathwork, and how do you kind of make sense of the... God, this is so important. How do you make sense of the things? Like, I'm huge on this. I have a lot of mental activity, as you can probably tell, which is why I have to kind of make these videos and podcasts so I can just mouth off into the cyberspace and whatever. So it's like experiencing over understanding. Like, you don't necessarily need to understand what the hell's going on, but just to open up enough space to actually experience it. That's what helps it kind of flow and move through, and that's what helps you, quote unquote, let go of things. Like, you don't always need to understand what's going on. It's like, how far do you think that's going to go anyway? Like, how far do you think your understanding is going to get? You're like a drop in the ocean. You've got you and your understanding of what the world is, which is largely probably a load of falsehoods and just perceptual structures that you've picked up in childhood, and just basically a lot of nonsense. And then you've got like the universe and everything on multiple dimensions of unfathomable and inconceivable amounts of information. It's like, what are you going to do? Process all that? Well, you kind of are doing that, but not with your brain. So just chill out, basically. That's probably the core of his whole thing, is just relax, just chill out and breathe and be aware and relax and breathe. Right, that's it, the triangle, the pyramid again. So God, that was a long post ramble, post dialogue ramble, forget it, man. It's, you know what it was. It's fine. It's all fine. I'll see you in part 2. So, thanks.
Perception Architecture Radio.